Hey everyone, Matron here bringing you another StarCraft 2 commentary, this time another game with Minigun, or Inflow Mini, spawning as the red Protoss, and Drewbie, Root Drewbie, spawning as the blue Terran. So this is actually before the Blizzard name change, and also in patch 1.1.2. So it's a few weeks old, but wanted to bring you quite an epic game between these two players. So Drewbie, one of the co-leaders of the Root gaming team, along with Cats, very solid Terran player. And then Minigun, one of the top ladder players in the North American ladder, number 24 according to Blizzard's top 200. And we saw his games earlier with Hydra when both of them were pretty bad-mannered. But it looks like these two are quite friendly, so look forward to this one. Looks like Minigun is going to send his scout out first, which is pretty typical in this PvT matchup. Terran player usually sends out after the barracks, sometimes after the supply depot, depending on the map. But it looks like neither player's build is really going to be affected too much. You don't have to wall off against any sort of Zergling rush, and you don't need to make sure that there's no 6 pool or 10 pool coming. So we will see that they are in these close positions by air, but they are a bit longer by ground, as we see that the player has to go down his ramp, which is away towards the other player, and then all the way up across the map, and then up the ramp with the other player. The other thing these positions do on Lost Temple is they really cut the map in half, giving one player, Drewbie, the bottom right-hand corner of the map, and then Minigun would have the top left-hand corner. And then the Xel'Naga towers could be important as well, as those are going to be the gateway, these two areas here, towards all the bases that the player might establish during the game if they do cut the map in half. So it looks like Drewbie is getting a gas out, no tech lab yet on this barracks, just pumping out a few Marines, going to try to deny any more scouting. And now just scouting himself for Minigun. Minigun getting out the cybernetics core after the gateway, pretty interesting position. He might be trying to hide a bit of his tech. If the Terran player scans right here, he may not see some of these buildings. So something you can definitely do in the PvT matchup, as your buildings don't need to be on the ramp. And it looks like the probe and the SCV are going to go at it. So it looks like the probe going to pull off while all of its shields are low, and then wait to recharge. So Drewbie now moving out to this tower, and he will be able to see anything coming for Minigun. Minigun just working on his warp gate tech, and then a chrono boosted stalker. We saw he does like to use these early units and put pressure on his opponent. So chrono boosting out this stalker. If he can get close to these Marines, he may be able to take one or both of them down and perhaps take this tower. Looks like we have a tech lab and a reactor coming out for Drewbie at this point, and he's also getting the his first Marauder out as well and working on that concussive shell. So the Marauder with the concussive shell are going to be very powerful against the gateway units. Marauder doing extra damage against the Stalker, as the Stalker did take down the SCV that was scouting. And it looks like Drewbie has not yet scouted what Minigun may be going for. So the build is totally up in the air as far as Drewbie is concerned. Again, the Marauder is so powerful against the Stalkers, doing bonus damage against the armor. And also the concussive shell able to slow down the Zealots so that the Marines can kite them and take them down. Looks like Minigun throwing down a fast expand, something you can definitely do against Terran, taking advantage of a bit of a timing window as Terran is working on stim, working on concussive shell, getting out reactors and tech labs on these barracks. It can often take them a few minutes to get their army up and running, and you can throw down this fast expand and try to get into more of a macro game. Looks like Minigun now working on his second and third gate, putting a few Stalkers over here just in case there are any Banshees in play, as he has not gotten to do much scouting of Drewbie after the initial probe going into the base. Looks like Drewbie now moving out, Minigun making sure not to lose this probe. He can go back to that tower after this army is left, and now he's going to get a bunch of units here warping in on the high ground, and Drewbie doing a good job moving in on the left hand side away from the high ground, and going to put pressure on this Nexus. He needs to try to focus fire down these units. It looks like Minigun is now pulling off about 8 probes to try to tank the damage from these Marines and Marauders. We have more Marines and Marauders streaming across the field, going to reinforce here, and now they need to get their kite on and try to take down these units. We see a Zealot coming in with the concussive shell, so slow, not going to be able to take down the Marines. And now Minigun forced to bring more probes off the line to try to absorb some of the damage. Drewbie going to be focusing down these units as they warp in, but the probes forcing the units back, and it looks like Drewbie's attack is going to be foiled for the moment. Minigun has enough units to take down a little bit of miss micro by Drewbie here. Minigun has enough units to take down these aggressive Marines and Marauders, and now he is set up on 2 bases. Looks like Drewbie took that opportunity to get up another command center as well. Does have stim complete, and he does have concussive shell. He is now working on combat shield. So we see the robotics facility out for Minigun. He will have the observer coming out shortly, and then he will be able to see the build of Drewbie. Right now, pretty simple, just these 3 racks. He does not have any other production facilities at this point. Looks like he is just now getting out of factory, but that little bit of pressure weakened both armies from each player, 800 versus 600, and both players probably going to pull back here and macro up a bit. If we look at Minigun, just working off the 2 gas right now. Drewbie also on 2 gas. Excuse me, Drewbie is actually on 1 gas, now just creating the 2nd gas. So it looks like he cut gas at the start to push out a lot of those units. And he's also behind a little bit in the worker count, 35 to 31. He has not had the command center up, the 2nd one, as long as Minigun had his Nexus up. But he does have these mules off these 2 orbital commands, so going to be able to catch up there. If we look at the production tab again, looks like both players just warping in units off the 3 warp gates. 1 robotics facility, currently stagnant, not making anything. Possibly like to see him use this on another observer, maybe another, or start on Immortals if the opposing player is going for Marauders. It looks like he is. Looks like the probe here gonna have to duke it out with the SCV for this tower. Drewbie has taken his tower, and now that he's gotten the probe off the tower, he's gonna move in again, but Minigun is going to be able to see this. Again, pulling that probe back so that he can go back and scout another day. And the observer trying to follow the army of Drewbie, but got a bit of a late start. Drewbie now getting up a starport as well, and he's preparing a reactor for the starport, so going to start pushing out medevacs. Have some great force fields by Minigun here. No retreating for Drewbie, and these Zealots are just doing work on these Marauders up front. See, the Stalkers need to get into the battle here and try to finish off these Marauders. Looks like we have another warp gate coming from Minigun, so he'll soon be on 4. Again, no hidden tech, but he does have pylons spread all around in case there are any drops or Banshee play from the right side. Looks like he's getting up a Twilight Council and charge, so combined with the force fields, charge going to be very powerful against the Marine Marauder group, and it looks like Minigun going to try some aggression of his own. We see Drewbie throwing up a number of bunkers, now stemming up and pulling SCVs off the line, try to tank a bit of this damage. He can focus down these Zealots from range here. He does have Marines working from the high ground, and Minigun does not have any sort of sight up here. I'm not sure where his observer is, but he is actually, it's right here, but he was not able to see up there to kill those Marines. Looks like Drewbie's going to fend that off, and Drewbie's now establishing a 3rd secret expansion here. So if this can get up and running, and he can get on even more racks and start getting out a few medevacs, he may be able to overwhelm the Protoss player macro-wise. Looks like we have charge about to complete. We also have a Templar Archives on the way for Minigun. So he will be going for Storms and Archons. Looks like we have more gateways and a Forge coming down as well, so he will soon be on 5 gates. Something we saw him do against Hydra in those games. He got on 5 gates much earlier than this game. So if we look at the income of both players, 61 Harvesters for Minigun. He's got quite the advantage. We see very good saturation versus the 41 of Drewbie, so not quite sure about this 3rd base, as he does not really have a lot of SCVs. He's not working on this 4th gas. See, Minigun does have all 4 gas working, now working on Lightning for these High Templar, and got out a few of them here. Looks like we do have a salvage from that bunker. Now Drewbie going to be using those extra minerals to just macro up a bit, throwing down a few factories, it looks like. Did cancel something there, and now going to get a Ghost Academy as well. So throwing a tech lab onto that factory, we may actually see some tanks. Something you can do here, and it looks like he's going to get these bunkers in place, is put tanks at this tower, and this tower becomes quite the impenetrable fortress if you get bunkers and tanks down. So now going to be claiming his side of the map, perhaps throwing down this gold expansion. We see Minigun is just on these two bases right now. Drewbie's APM 151 average versus the 93 of Minigun. Looks like Minigun working on a few upgrades here. He's already working on the ground armor level 1, and against Terran, the armor level 1 is very good for Protoss. You're not going to be able to kill Marines or Marauders in any extra hits from a Zealot with the +1, but you will be able to kill or take many extra hits if you do have the +1 armor. So a lot of players going for that armor first in this TVP matchup. Looks like we have a 4-pack of Marauders here in a Medivac, so drop there and a stim could take down a Nexus very quickly, especially if the reaction of Minigun is slow. It looks like we did have a missile turret here, and it was able to take down the observer of Minigun, so he's going to have to get out another observer. Looks like he's working on that right now. Now getting out the amulet for the High Templar. If you look at the army tab of both players, 2600 to 2200, so relatively even. He does have these stalkers over here. He will be able to fend off this drop. Should be focusing down that medevac first so they cannot retreat. And now able to focus down these Marauders, perhaps microing back a few stalkers so he does not lose them. But no, it looks like he's going to be able to clean that up. But he did lose a few stalkers there. And now he has the fear in him. He knows that Drewbie is dropping, so he's going to have to leave a little bit of an army, as he's doing it here in his main, at most of his bases, just to try to intercept those medevacs. The majority of his army will be at this pylon here and the tower, as it now has 2 probes here, so he needs to spread out a little bit. We do have an observer in a good position here. It's away from the missile turret and away from any sort of detection, so it's going to be able to see all the troop movement of Drewbie at this point. He's going to know that Drewbie is on this gold. He does not yet know about this this hidden expansion for Drewbie. If we look at the income, 2200 compared to 1400. So Drewbie now coming back into this income-wise, and he also has that income with 68 harvesters compared to the 88. 88 is a very high number of harvesters, considering you only get 200 supply worth of units. You're just leaving yourself about 110 supply worth of army. So not sure I'd agree with this. Often better just to spread out your probes. This many probes is not going to be mining efficiently off the 8, and it looks like now 6 mineral patches. So really needs to cut probe production here, as he's not being efficient with the probes he already does have. We do see that the incomes are evening out a bit now that Minigun is on this 3rd base, and he's also getting up the expansion here at the gold.